If you've ever been to school or a museum exploring the subject of natural history, you're bound to have heard of the theory of evolution. If you've heard of that, you've also no doubt heard what the scientific community dub as religious extremists, those who insist that there was no evolution, instead claiming everything was created. This wrestling between the two sides has gone on since evolutionary theory was first introduced. However, if you listen carefully to their argument, a larger question is raised. That of, are we the product of random events? Or is there a God figure responsible for creating us? That is a very interesting question with universally reaching consequences. Please stop for a moment to think about what this means. For example, if life evolved, then who are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? What is the scope of reality as we see it, and how will we develop in the future? But if life was created, then who made us? Why did it make us? What purpose were we created to serve? And once we've served it, what can we expect? And if we weren't created to serve a function, well, now what? Where do we go from here? If you've stopped to think about this for even a moment, this is a vast subject, holding arguably the most important questions we'll ever ask, as the answers to these questions will yield universally changing information that will shape the way we live and develop as individuals and as a species. And that is what we are going to consider in this video. Using unbiased scientific rationale, does life show signs of it evolving or of it being created? At the end of this, we will have a powerful understanding of each of these diametrically opposing positions, perhaps even having enough information to understand which position is scientifically accurate and which is flawed. Are you ready? Okay then, let's start.
Creationism.
The easiest concept to understand is creationism. Please note, when I speak of creationism here, I speak of the concept of intelligent design being behind life. Here, the belief is, there is a very powerful being who made, literally, everything. Some people hold the belief that highly advanced alien beings are responsible for intelligent life on Earth via genetic splicing and modification, but that would be a distraction and looking into the minutiae. Why? Because the question still remains, who made them, or the basic life forms they modified? Everything has to start somewhere, and creationism seeks to address just that point. Unfortunately, creationism is hard to prove. That doesn't mean it can't be real, just that, in the absence of an all-powerful being presenting itself to us and explaining who it is, there's just not much to go on. Everything around us is complete. There are no part-made things. The water cycle that distributes usable water throughout the Earth is complete. So is the oxygen cycle and the Earth's thermal regulation cycle. Fish are fish. Mammals are mammals. Reptiles are reptiles. There are no part-made things waiting for their final leg to be assembled and installed, or a giant hand making it. So, with this as the starting point, the only way to prove creationism is to look for evidence of intelligent, manufactured design existing in our time. At this point, some will traverse the path of seeking to prove the existence of God, but remember, that is not the subject of this discussion. Here, we are seeking to identify whether life shows evidence of it evolving or being designed. Please also note, in the context of our discussion, even if there is a God, it doesn't automatically mean it created life via intelligent design. It could have just as easily created evolution. And that brings us nicely onto the introduction for the opposing argument. Evolution. The idea of things changing form originated from ancient Greek philosophy and has been with us ever since. Roman poet Lucretius spoke of this idea in his work De Rerum Natura, which means in English, on the nature of things. Some Islamic scholars, such as Abd Khaldun, mentioned such in his book Maqadimah in the year 1377. It was widely debated in the 17th and 18th centuries, and even modern popes have endorsed it. But this wasn't always the way. It wasn't until the works of Charles Darwin and Alfred Wallace that evolutionary reasoning gained a degree of rational acceptance. Darwin's theory of natural selection began around 1838, resulting in his 1859 book, The Origin of Species. In it, he documented cycles in the development of populations, where over-success led to population growth. Growth led to limited resources such as food, water or shelter, where only the most capable would still be able to access those limited resources, allowing them to survive. However, the less capable wouldn't, and that would result in their death. He called this his theory of natural selection, noting that successful selective breeding resulted in descent with modification. This meant that qualities which made parents successful were passed on to their young. This is fairly straightforward stuff. You can see this as you look around you in the world today. Now, it wasn't until Thomas Huxley came and applied Darwin's observations to the development of humans from apes and birds from dinosaurs, followed by the efforts of many contributors since, that the modern understanding of evolution came about. Modern evolutionary theory uses the same rationale, with the following exception. Darwin's observations were based on things he could see around him. Modern evolutionary theories applies this reasoning to all life, going back to its very origin. Reasoning that one day, on a dead world, non-sentient slime randomly combined to make the very first life forms that over time have led to our being here today. Now, there is no physical evidence to prove these changes occur over one lifetime. Therefore, it is accepted that these changes take place slowly, over many generations. Evidence is obtained by looking at the records of fossils paleontologists have discovered. These remains of life forms past are dated. Then they are compared with other finds and modern life that exists today to identify developmental trends. By looking at the changing face of life on Earth across the ages, evolutionists seek to find the links that join what was to what is. That progressional change is described as evolution. Is there evidence to support this? Lots. Excavation has revealed a tremendous amount of information about the Earth and the life forms that existed on it during its different stages of development. There's been a myriad of different remains found in different locations, at different depths, all allowing scientists to identify with a measure of accuracy even the changing water levels and the chemical composition of the atmosphere at different times where the fossils were buried. Throughout all of the thousands of remains that have been found, paleontologists have had to organise each of the remains into time periods, noting the prevailing ecosystem of those times and observing how life has evolved to adapt to these changes. Under evolutionary theory, life forms with less beneficial qualities must either replace them with better ones or face extinction, as better suited life forms take over the shared environment, either eating all their food or even eating the life forms themselves. If this theory is true, then all attributes held by any life form today has to have had a logical, linear path of development preceding it. Every quality must develop by smaller logical steps, each of which are beneficial. Where it is beneficial, it is built upon. Where it is not, it is discontinued and all further development along that path ceases. That is the single strongest principle that evolutionary theory rests upon. Now, paleontology is the study of fossilized animals and plants. During the process of fossilization, only the strongest, hardest parts of any life form remains, with the softer parts being consumed by the environment the remains rest within. Now, take a moment to think about that. Let's put that into the context of something we can all easily relate to: a mobile phone. A phone is made of a wide range of different materials: metals, plastics, glass, rubbers, etc. Due to their differing strengths and physical attributes, these materials will age differently in different environments. One could argue, for example, that over time, a phone would go through the following transitional changes as it's buried for ages. Some of the metals, rubbers and plastics could erode. The glass becomes smashed and fragmented. Eventually, only the most durable materials would survive after being buried by tons of shifting rock, soil and water. My question is, how much would you be able to learn about the operation of that phone by looking at the few misshapen parts that remain? Let's try. Imagine you are out in the future fossil hunting, millions of years after mobile phones existed, and you found this. How would you know which phone they came from? How long would it take you to arrange those pieces like this? Even after you've arranged them in this format, would you fill in the blanks, the missing pieces, like this, if you've never seen a phone before? Now think. Even if you defied the odds and managed to guess the design of this phone, of this part of the case, how would you accurately determine the circuit board, the microchips, or even harder, the programming, the touchscreen and the other things that makes the phone do what it does? Does that sound like a lot of guesswork to you? A bit like trying to run a marathon while wearing earmuffs and a bag on your head? Now consider this. Even the simplest forms of life are significantly more complex than a phone and are made of organic components that erode significantly faster than plastic, metal, and glass. I think that makes the point. If we are to find any detailed, accurate information to prove which of the two opposing theories of evolution or creation are correct, we will have to do so using currently existing sources of detailed information. The composition of things. All things, as we understand them, are composites, made of smaller parts, which, in themselves, are made of smaller parts, which in themselves are made of even smaller parts. It seems the more detail in which we study current life, the more elaborate and complex it becomes. This is good because with this mass of data, we can hope to find evidence of either exclusive, systematic, linear development that supports evolution, or otherwise that supports creationism. We are lucky to be alive at this time. For the first time in history, we have the ability to analyse the natural world around us in such detail that we can scientifically find increasingly accurate answers to these questions. We can analyse and understand life around us in such depth that we can identify the individual building blocks that life and the components it's made of are built. These provide definitive answers to the age-old question of evolution versus creation. Now, when presenting data, there are thousands of studies that would reveal the development process of a life form that could be argued to support both ideologies. Under creationism, anything that exists is possible, as it's all made by a higher being. Due to this higher being's involvement, it's impossible to find anything that conclusively disproves this idea, as this creator would have even created the rules by which we evaluate the natural world by. Evolution, however, is different. It is a more fragile idea into which a logical progression of beneficial developmental steps must exist in order to create a more advanced life form. If one of these developmental steps offers no advantage, according to evolutionary theory, it should not be built upon but be discontinued, with beneficial alternative types of development taking the lead in directing the development of the life form. Evolution would be even less likely if there were life forms that existed with complex attributes that only work when more than one independent, non-beneficial development was needed for there to be any gain at all. Do such life forms exist? Surprisingly, yes. There are many life forms that contain anomalies in their developmental process, anomalies that, according to the rules of evolution, should not exist. Here is just one. The Bacterial Flagella. We are all familiar with bacteria, those small, simple structures that do so much good, or harm when their function is contrary to good health. Well, have you ever wondered how they move around? Some use a mechanism called the flagella. The flagella is a rotating whip-like structure that protrudes from the outside of the bacterial wall, which operates a bit like a propeller on a motorboat. How it operates is very interesting. It actually uses bioelectrical energy to drive a rotor. But what is of relevance to this discussion is how it was made. You see, some of the flagella's parts can serve a function on their own. But there are many that individually serve no purpose at all, and therefore, according to the rules of evolution, should not exist as redundant random mutations are dropped from the gene pool. Yet, they do, and it is only when each are combined with the other, redundant parts of the flagella's construction, that its game-changing, beneficial role is attained at all. See this? This is an induction motor, as used in factories, power stations, and even the alternator on your car's engine. See any similarity between its operation and that of the bacterial flagella? Both use contactless electrical energy to rotate a shaft. Could it be sensibly argued that the induction motor occurred through the random interaction of natural elements and wasn't the product of intelligent design? No. Now, if you rationally concede that the induction motor was the product of intelligent design, then how much more so for a similar organic design operating on a scale that science is yet to master working at? There are also many other examples of singularly beneficial abilities of natural life forms that originate from many individually useless physical developments, but only serve a function when combined, thereby bypassing the theory of evolution, suggesting intelligent design. Examples: you have the bat with its sonar, the dolphin with its radar, and the shark's skin structural armament and low friction design that today even scientists are seeking to mirror for boat hulls and submarines. On the basis of this evidence, it is clear that there is at least one exception, and probably more, that defies the evolutionary explanation of the formation of life. Therefore, if even one exception to the evolutionary rule exists, one very important question is raised. If it did not evolve, then how did it get here? So now what? After considering these real-life, provable observations, there is clear evidence of there being exceptions to the evolutionary rule, whose existences fall way beyond evolutionary explanation. Scientifically, where there is an exception, there has to be another cause. Where there is evidence of design, then that would suggest a designer. There are other areas of study, such as the fossil record, the formation of the universe, and theories relating to the beginning of life, that is, single-celled life forms. But all of these lean towards the same conclusion. Evolution is not behind life, and there is another force out there. This analytically derived logical conclusion may not be to the liking of fanatical evolutionists who irrationally take any evidence of anything contrary to Darwinian theory as religious nonsense. There are accounts of professors being discredited and even sued by parents for expressing ideas like these mentioned above. Nonetheless, the evidence appears to support creationism, and any attempt to say otherwise is unscientific, and can only be done so by selectively viewing and omitting evidence to reach a predetermined conclusion. The Science Council defines science as being the pursuit and application of knowledge and understanding of the natural and social world following a systematic methodology based on evidence. And if you look below, there's a list of observations that they've made as to how it should be conducted. Please ask yourself, when science stops systematically studying to identify what is, instead attempting to fit reality into a preconceived bias, then is it still science? Where does it stop being honest exploration and change into a deception, or the unfounded mumblings of the misinformed trying only to justify their position rather than seek truth? Either evolutionary theory provides an absolute answer to the origin of life, or we must accept there is another factor involved capable of creating multiple structures of intelligent design. Where you have intelligent design, there has to be an intelligent designer. Where you have an intelligent designer, the work of their metaphoric hands is their creation. Once it is evidenced that even part of life has been created, there has to be a creator. And once we have that, it becomes clear. The application of thorough, unbiased, and honest scientific rationale supports creationism. Now, as always with science, one answer opens up many more questions. In this case, they include: 1. If evolution does not offer a comprehensive answer to the origin of life, why is it being defended with such vigour and conflicting ideas fought with such tyrannical rant? 2. If there is a creator, what was its purpose for creating such a wide range of creations, also known as, why are we all here? And 3. If there is evidence of intelligent design, then who is the intelligent designer? All this and more I'll attempt to cover in forthcoming presentations. Thank you for watching. I'm certain this video would have given you lots to think about. Please feel free to re-watch this video to ensure you understand the points raised, and then add your observations, questions and comments in the section below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel to be the first to receive the latest news on the coming videos, which I know you'll love.